Hello and welcome to part 3 of our classic Christmas cue that we are writing. Bear in mind I'm actually doing this during the UK heatwave, so thumbs up for one of those is always appreciated. On the plus side, I am going to go and play at a festival later this afternoon, so that will be fun. Right, this entire composition has been built on top of our template, so we have reverbs and stems ready to go. If you're not sure how to make a template like this, I've done a video on how to create one just over there. Now the first thing I need to do is organize these into what are going to become our stems eventually. I've potentially got 10 here, I might need more. One thing to bear in mind is you will want to separate high strings and low strings in this sort of orchestral template, and high horns, low horns, and if you had high woods and low woods, you'd want to separate them into separate stems. We don't really have a bass guitar, so to do a drum and bass mix, which a library is very likely to request, what you're going to do in this case is use low strings, low brass, and the drums to create that drum bass mix. Let me go through, make sure everything's labelled. I'm going to colour code things into groups, and that will be a guide for where the reverbs and the stems need to be labelled from there. There we go, all nicely colour coded. I've put the sleigh bells on their own track because that's something an editor might want to have control over. I've got high strings, low strings, then we've got the harp, various effects all on its own stem. Then we've got the reeds, we've got high horns and low horns, or high brass, low brass. The tubular bells and the glock on the same track as tune percussion. Then we'll have U-jam drums and damage as the percussion. Stem, also the untuned percussion, the cymbals and the snare will go on their own. Funnily enough, that comes to 10, which is what I had in the template that I was working on top of. So what I'm going to do now is go through, label all these correctly so I can set the outputs correctly. There we go, all the labelling done, as you can see in the mixer. And remember, these are already pre-set up with a default reverb ready to go. They are all on different buses for inputs, so 1 to 10 for the reverbs and 21 to 30 for the stems. What we now need to do is route the instruments to the correct reverbs and stems instead of the stereo outs. So for example, all these high strings, if I select all of those, the output is now going to go to the high string stem. So instead of stereo output, they're now going into that stem track. And similarly with the sends, I'm going to use that to add them to the high string reverb channel, ready for us to add reverb. So I'm going to go through and do all those. And there we go, quick sanity check. The bus numbers should go up, so each group increases because I'm working down the list but going up the bus numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and with the outputs they should equally go up in sequence, so 21, 22, 20 all the way to 30. That's quite nice. What you'll now notice to double check is if I press play, you don't hear anything because everything is going to these stems. So we need to turn on input monitoring because they're audio tracks. There we go. So we can isolate each of these stems now. What I'm going to do is go through and just listen to each of the instruments, probably at this end section here, and see if there's any EQ I need to apply to any of the instruments just to shape them a little bit to start with. Then I'll start worrying about reverb. So back in a sec. There we go. I've added a few EQ tweaks here and there. A lot of the orchestral instruments I tend to leave alone. Drums and damage probably don't need too much doing to them because they cover such a wide spectrum of the frequencies. Next up, we need to add reverb. Now I'm going to start with the percussion, tuned, untuned sleigh bells, because the drums and damage sort of have a built-in reverb that I don't want to get rid of, so I need to match everything else to that. So I'm going to start trying to put the percussion section together Make sure the levels aren't clipping too much, because remember, we do need to leave space or headroom at the end for mastering. And at the moment we're at hitting negative 2.1, which is actually quite loud. So that's going to need to come down overall. Okay, let me go through, start adding some reverb, check the levels. Remember, if you're altering levels, always check that you haven't actually automated something like the sleigh bells, because changing the actual fader will then get overwritten by automation when you record it. Handy tip there. I'll come back when I've put reverb on absolutely everything. Well, there we go, reverb added. To give you an idea of what we're actually doing here in real terms, let's just play it without any of the reverbs. I've muted them all at the moment. Everything's still close mic'd as we designed it to start with, because we knew we were going to add this. So let's hear it with the reverb on. Nice. Okay, next step, we're going to record it. So we take it out of input monitoring, put it into record, back to the beginning. We're going to hit the record button and watch the stems appear as if by magic. And there we go, job done. We've got 10 stems ready to create our individual stems and then the mixes. I've only gone and put the transparent mix, which I 75% agree with. It's basically taken out some of these mid frequencies. I'm happy with that. I hope you are. Like and subscribe, always appreciated. I'll play it now for you as an outro and see you in the next one. Bye for now.